for committees.
And you can have it all with your membership in the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce.
This is Strictly Business, presented by the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. Sponsored in part by the law offices of Young Wooldridge, San Joaquin Community Hospital.
And welcome back to Strictly Business. I'm Nathan Ollie with the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. And joining me now is Louis Amestoy with the Bakersfield Californian. He's the Director of Audience Development. And we're going to chat a little bit about interactive media and how we can help businesses change the way they market themselves. Good morning, Louis.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. We're just hanging out with me and my bobblehead friend.
Bobblehead. Yeah, Bartle in here earlier.
Bartle left the bobblehead. That's pretty great. So let's talk a little bit about interactive media. What are we looking at when we're talking about it? What does that entail?
Well, I look at media from the standpoint that, it's really changed dramatically in the last 25 years. I mean, historically, let's say this, businesses had to work through pretty strict gatekeepers when it came to producing media. Either there was a high cost of entry and, you had to produce your own content, or you had to rely on someone else to produce it for you. And that's reasonably, a kind of a complicated look at how things have evolved. But over the last, 25 years, especially over the last 10 years, businesses and companies have now had the opportunity to take care of their own message.
Okay.
And that is a fundamentally a big change in the way that companies are now kind of presenting themselves or positioning themselves in media. And so when we say interactive media, what kind of interaction are we looking at? Well, obviously Facebook's an example of interactive media. Right. Instagram is an example of interactive media. Twitter is an opportunity for you guys for people to engage with their audiences in ways that you don't always think about. And a lot of businesses don't understand or don't know how to take advantage of these tools to kind of harness their audiences. If you look at some businesses in Kern County, Kevin Bartle from the Bakersfield Condors, and he was here a few minutes ago. I mean, they're masters of actually audience development and interactive media. They actually have more fans on Facebook than we do at the Californian. There are businesses in town that are very savvy about it. The Condors are one that use it. And to me, interactive media is a good mix of photos, of video, of storytelling, because every business has a story. Now, a lot of times I'll hear, businesses say, I don't use Facebook or I don't use Twitter. That's for kids. It's like, well, it really isn't. If you look at the way that Facebook, for instance, has changed, it's become very mature in a hurry. And it also changes all the time in how people are able to use it. And so it's kind of it's a really broad sort of topic. And it's a pretty fascinating topic for local businesses.
So looking at, for example, Facebook, and the Condors have more Facebook fans because, you guys don't do a teddy bear toss.
We don't, or an underwear toss.
No underwear tosses.
We're thinking about doing it here from the top of the building, though.
Okay. So. Can you do that during Scott's show?
Yeah, we
do that during our show. Yeah. So looking at something like Facebook, it's not just pictures of your kids at Disneyland or statuses or whatever. It's something you can directly market and sell to people, right? I mean, what?
Yeah, it's a highly effective tool. I mean, it really is. And I look at, there's a few businesses that come to mind. Like I said, like the Condors. There's a couple. Salty's Barbecue is pretty good at using Facebook. It's really an important tool because it has matured and because it is constantly changing. It's the way that people access content. And Facebook wants to be sort of the internet on its own sort of self-contained channel. And the truth be told, they have a gigantic audience, and you could reach, thousands of people. And basically, I don't know what the penetration is in Bakersfield, but I would suspect that a large percentage of people have a Facebook page or access Facebook at least once or twice a day in Kern County and Bakersfield.
So talk a little bit about that. If you are on a platform such as Facebook, you can target your push directly to certain segments of the population. How does that work?
Well, I mean, they have different advertising vehicles that you could go the free route,
right?
Which also is highly effective in my opinion. And you could go the paid route, and the paid route would be something along the lines of, I'm going to target women ages 18 to 35. I'm going to set a spending limit on my day, and I'm going to use this piece of video to target that audience, because I know that video works really, really well as far as people staying with it and clicking through to it. And then you hit that, and you reach a pretty wide demographic.
Okay, so let's say you're just the smallest of businesses, a startup. You've got one or two people in your shop. You know it's something you need to be involved in. Mm-hmm. You know you need to expand your digital presence. Where do you start? I think
it's absolutely critical that you have a social media strategy. Before, in the old days, not too long ago, your key thing was, well, where do I want to be seen? What is the first thing I want to buy? I'm going to call the phone company. I'm going to get it in the phone book, because that's the one. It's in everyone's home. Well, phone books have just gone by the wayside now. So you need to have a social media strategy off the top of, right off the bat. So first things first is to get that started and get that ready to go, and have sort of a plan, because you gotta kind of work that audience. You got to work that audience in a way that makes sense. If you're a lawyer, you got to update with story ideas. Chain Cone Styles does a good job of saying, hey, by the way, this happened and we were involved in this. They always are kind of talking about things that are either in the news to their audience, or things that may be something they might be litigating on currently. So it's a very interesting sort of dynamic. But I think every business out there, I did a talk one time a couple of years ago to a group of CPAs in Atlanta about this, and they were all like, well, why do we need to be on Facebook? It's like, well, because one, it's searchable. Two, it's opportunity to control your story and tell your story, and all of you have an interesting story. You may have differences in the way you do your job that makes you unique or differentiates you from another accountant. And a lot of them had not even considered that as an option, or considered they had their own story to tell.
So like here at the newspaper, you don't use your social media platforms just to promote what's in the next day's paper.
No,
I mean, it's something that's part of the strategy, but you're not necessarily looking to your social media channels to encourage somebody to go to a rack and buy a newspaper. You put things from trend stories from around the country, things like that. What goes into that decision-making process on what makes it to your social media channel?
I think partly is that, the mission of the newspaper, for instance, is and we have a lot of wire services, and we always use those wire services to tell stories that we think are important to our audience and to our readers. And what we often see is that, like, we will use CBS News, NBC, whatever sources we find out there, we'll share that stuff. And kind of, I'll tell you the truth, is that the one thing that's helpful about Facebook is that they have really robust analytics. Mm-hmm. And so analytics can often help shape how you determine that strategy. So if a post is going to get, 500 views or reach 500 people, that's the key thing is there. They talk about reach versus one that's going to reach, 3,500 to 4,000 people, then we're more apt to do that. And
right.
Like there are certain things that we know that Facebook has taught us. One, our website, for instance, is usually accessible by people still in the mornings from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. It's kind of their peak. This show's kind of in the wheelhouse of the peak of our traffic. But during Facebook usage is actually higher at 9 o'clock at night.
Oh, okay.
People kind of lean back a little bit. They're on their phone.
They're in bed on their phone, right?
Bed on their phone. I mean, I can't tell you. I update the Facebook page sometimes at midnight while I'm like laying in bed. Oh, that's an interesting story. Let's put that on the Facebook page. And it's like 2 steps and you're done. But it's really, and what's crazy is I did one at midnight and it reached some crazy amount of people between midnight and like 3 a.m. It shows you how many people are up at that hour. And I knew that it would be successful because I knew there was probably people up and watching that or looking for that kind of content at that hour. So we look at it really from the standpoint that there is a lot of, we don't have the market cornered on content, mm-hmm. and that people here have broad interests. That's why they come to the Californian. We're a general interest newspaper. So we look at it from that way.
So how has it helped with audience engagement? People don't just write letters to the editor, or they don't just make phone calls anymore. does it help you with the feedback that you're getting from your audience?
I think it does. I think it helps us with, I think it helps us identify what's important to readers. And, I can tell you right now that what Facebook has taught us in a few areas. One, I mean, obviously the weather is very, very important to people. Strangely enough, if you look at our behaviors around weather, for instance, that really, people like pictures of the weather. They like pictures. Our photographer, Casey Christie, is
Sure.
really a terrific photographer. And we post his photos all the time. A lot of them weather related or scenic, and those things really, really matter. News from the Central Coast is really important to readers here in Bakersfield, which has led us to believe a strategy that we probably are going to actually have more content in the printed paper from San Luis Obispo, Morro Bay, Cayucos, Cambria, Pismo, because
the weekend destination.
The
spots
weekend
for people from
destination,
Bakersfield,
right? And maybe as far south as Santa Barbara and Ventura, because when we put this stuff on Facebook, we put it on our website, it moves the needle in a way that's very, very measurable.
Okay.
So I think the other thing that we've seen too that's fundamentally changed is video has really changed Facebook. Facebook was sort of a marginal video platform.
Mm-hmm.
Really, you wanted to go to YouTube, but now it seems, and Facebook's constantly changing their algorithm. They change their site all the time, and it's hard to kind of understand how it works exactly. But they've changed it a lot, and now it's really geared towards video. And we've actually, quite frankly, seen better performance from video via Facebook than we have in any other platform.
Really?
Yeah, and part of it is because of the way that it auto plays, in some cases, especially on mobile devices. But there is a pretty high level of engagement in areas. And so we've actually seen with real estate, for instance. We had a real estate show that we were doing last year, and we would post videos from the houses. And those videos would perform very, very well because, one, people are innately curious about that, and B, Facebook was aimed to serve video, even better than it was before. We just did an experiment with one of our vertical channels that we have around auto racing, and we produced a whole series of videos and photos, all original content. Well, we went from a site that we were struggling to kind of get likes on to having to increasing our number of likes on that by 40%. So we had like another 200 people liked us in a period of a week because of the original content that we were producing. So one is looking at the times when you do that. Two, you're looking at the content you're producing. So for instance, like if you're a business, right, and you look at your analytics on your page for Facebook, and you say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to post this at 9:00. I have a deal. I'm going to post a deal at 9:00. Here's a picture of a coupon or whatever it may be, or I'm going to have this deal, and maybe it's a video piece. That's a great way to test how your audience behaves, because the key measurements are how many people share that stuff, how many people does it reach, how many people like it, and how much time they spend with that post.
Okay, in that last minute, you've got one more tip for small businesses
Instagram.
Trying to get involved. Instagram. Okay, we had a story earlier in the show about Instagram being able to sell things directly through Instagram now.
Yeah.
So why Instagram?
Instagram is one thing that's interesting about Instagram is that it's extremely powerful. It's a very pleasurable experience to go through and look at all the photos. It can be a little frustrating if you have bad eyesight, like I do, but it is a powerful tool. And I will tell you this, that for the younger demographic, it is the most powerful tool to reach people in out of all social media that we have. It's better than Facebook. It's better than Twitter. Snapchat is hard to measure at this point, but Instagram is really powerful. Our high school sports vertical, for instance, is where the kids are at, and that's how we reach the kids is through Instagram rather than Twitter or Facebook. There are some very smart businesses out there. In fact, Bolt House does a great job on Instagram. I recommend taking a look at what they do, especially with recipes in 15 seconds.
Good deal. All right, Louis Amestoy with the Bakersfield Californian. Thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it. We'll be right back after this with more Strictly Business.
If your doctor needs to refer you to a cancer center, what's your plan? The AIS Cancer Center at San Joaquin Community Hospital is a member of the UC Davis Cancer Care Network, which means